In today's press conference, Mike Gundy did give us a few nuggets, one of those being not everybody is buying in. So out of the 65 new players, only approximately 27 of them are going to see the field against UT Martin. So who are those 27 dudes?
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we get to jump right into this conversation of the Mike Gundy press conference. And yes, I do absolutely love press conferences because if you take some of the conversations mixed in with some of the interviews, mixed in with these press conferences, it does give you a pretty decent feel on what is happening. Does that mean we're going to be right all the time? Absolutely not. We're going to get a decent amount of things wrong, but I do think it helps create all of the necessary dots to be connected. Therefore, whenever he brings up today that by his count, about 27 dudes that are brand new to Oklahoma State, or they're going to play their first snaps ever inside Boone Pickens Stadium on the hallowed grounds of Lewis Field, there's a pretty good understanding that some names are natural, right? Like Haas Haney, this is going to be his first game inside Boone Pickens Stadium. This is going to be Zane Flores' first opportunity to actually take snaps inside Boone Pickens Stadium. So outside of those guys, who else do I think Oklahoma State is going to be including in these 27 dudes? So, of course, naturally, we do have to mention Haas Haney, Zane Flores. Caleb Hicks, the OU running back transfer, is also going to make his first appearance. Malik Charles, the big beast that is going to be playing the jack outside linebacker spot, making his first appearance. Wendell Gregory right next to him, another dude that I expect to have an absolutely massive season. It's his first game. Christian Fitzpatrick, the wide receiver out of Marshall. Another wide receiver, Terrell Davis out of UCO right down the road. Then you have BYU's Sidvini Havili Kafusi. Then at middle linebacker, you have number 5, the Akron transfer, Brian McCoy. Next to him, you'll be having Brandon Rawls, the Saginaw Valley State transfer that is just getting started on his football journey, much like Malik Charles. Then you have to go to the defensive side of the ball. Jalen Davies is going to be getting his first flavor of Stillwater, Oklahoma action after coming over from UCLA. Another speedster who seemingly is now the fastest player on the roster is J.K. Johnson, another quarterback transfer coming over from LSU. Then I think Eric Lester is the dude who had 1,300 yards receiving in high school before making the transition to cornerback at East. Yeah, you know what it is. I don't know how I always mess them up. But anywho, I think Eric Lester is going to be a valuable addition on the defensive side of the ball with the natural hands and the ability to run routes. Then you have Demarion Thomas. And I did tell you guys in the comments section yesterday, if I missed some people in my depth chart, please feel free to let me know. And you guys were right. You helped me out. You nailed it. I did leave off Demarion Thomas. So that is 100% on me. Not only did I leave him off, which is an egregious penalty, but I think right next to Amon Oates and Sidvini Havili Kafusi, I think he's going to be that next guy right there in line to make some massive things happen. He might even be right above those dudes, right? So, yeah, thank you, everybody out here in the comment section for helping me with that yesterday. Then we have slot wide receiver coming over from Auburn, Sam Jackson V, who also used to play quarterback, so I think that's going to add another layer of intrigue. Another dude coming over that I think is going to be athletically gifted enough to make some fun things happen is going to be Darius Thomas, the linebacker transfer from Louisville. Then we got to go with the big dude, the 6'6", 315-pound Bob Schick from Virginia Tech, manning the guard spot. Right next to him, the Tulsa transfer who's been able to put on the 25, 30 pounds, Kason Carpenter. Another offensive lineman that is going to slide to the outside and protect both Zane Flores and Haas Haney is going to be Markel Samuel. Then we have another tight end, Oscar Hammond. I think him coming over from North Texas is going to be a big deal, but I also think Will Money coming over from Utah State is going to factor into this equation as well. Another wide receiver out of Purdue, Shamar Rigby. Then you've got the kicker who won the Heisman for kicking at the lower levels, Gabe Panikowski. And then I think when it comes to a special teams beast that might actually get a little bit of action as an outside linebacker, middle linebacker, is going to be Gunnar Wilson. Ike Essenwoon is ahead of Gunnar, but I do believe that Ike, he played a decent chunk last year on special teams and some chunk minutes and things of that nature. then we got to keep this train rolling. I did not mention DeAndre Boykin yesterday in the depth chart. Somebody did mention that in the comments section. And the only reason being is, I just don't know a lot about Boykin. Obviously, he had some success over at North Carolina, but evidently there seems to be a few defensive transfers that are having a difficult time adjusting to Cowboy culture and the demands that come with it. I don't know that Boykin is one of them, but he is in the safety room, and the safety room has had some issues, and he is a transfer. So he might be one of those dudes that it took a little bit of time, took a little bit of correcting the course to get 100% dialed away. Don't know that for certain, but if he is dialed in and he's ready to rock and roll, we do expect DeAndre Boykin to be part of this list. All right, we're getting close. Now we got number 26. I think Rashad Bradley is a defensive end that is definitely set to play, that obviously, hasn't been able to take a snap. Obviously, Kyron Duhan is another individual that should be on this list. So that would put us at 27 right there. I do think that Gundy may be missing a few people here, right? He obviously knows way more than I do, but the objective, I would presume, would be to get Jalen Lloyd on the field, the speedster transfer wide receiver from Nebraska. So I think it's very plausible that we see some Jalen Lloyd, which would be like number 28. I think another wide receiver that is likely to get some playing time is true freshman Royal Capel. In what capacity, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe we're going to save a couple of these guys for Oregon, but not having Jalen Lloyd, not having Royal Capel, to me, doesn't make a bunch of sense. Another potential special teamer freshman, DJ Duggar, is a name to pay attention to, in my personal opinion. Then you have Michael Deotta. Michael Deotta, the Virginia transfer. Again, he might have been one of those dudes that took a little bit of time to get everything squared away and get him used to the Cowboy culture. But if he is involved, he should be pretty crucial to at least the developmental aspect. So he could be able to slide in here. And then lastly, I think Grant Sigerin, the Nebraska former tight end, former defensive end, now offensive tackle transfer. He's just too versatile, too athletic, too gifted to not play at all. Now, whenever you're a backup tackle and maybe even a third string tackle, it is going to be difficult to get on the field, but it should be one of those scenarios that Oklahoma State puts UT Martin away fairly comfortably, even with a decent number of backups on the field by the third quarter. If that is the case, then I expect that number could go from like 27 to 32, 33-ish. But out of the first 27 dudes, naturally, I want your participation on here. Let me know if you felt like I missed some dudes, because yesterday we did miss Demarion Thomas. We did miss Boykin. But other than that, it's pretty interesting. I'd heard that myself, Robert Allen, McLean Baxley, we all had different depth charts. So I was able to take a gander at Robert Allen's and to take a peek at McLean Baxley's. Mine and Robert Allen's are actually pretty comparable. He does have Kyron Duhan starting over Deshaun Brown, a defensive end. That was different. And he also had Landon Dean directly being the number 2 right behind Jaleel Johnson. I thought perhaps that could have been a Rashad Bradley style of role, or even an Armstrong Nodum. So that was really the biggest difference is, even though there is a bunch of talk, or there has been a bunch of talk from local news reporters in the state of Oklahoma that, they're all hearing Haas Haney is going to be the starter. All three of us had Zane Flores as our QB1, if I recall correctly. I'm pretty sure even McLean had Haas as his QB1. McLean's was a little perplexing, right, because he had Brandon Rawls backing up Brian McCloy at middle linebacker, and that ain't happening. Brian McCloy's backup currently is Ike Esenwoon, followed by Gunnar Wilson. Now, Jacoby Oliphant is going to factor into this, right? That is going to be pretty interesting. But with the loss of Zaquan Patterson and us being a little bit low numerically at safety, I kind of feel like it makes more sense, at least the first couple games, to keep Jacoby Oliphant as more of a safety spot. That was a little bit different. And then obviously as an outside linebacker, he does have Brandon Rawls kind of in that main spot with Trip White. Yeah, that's just, positionally speaking. He also had, for the jack linebacker position, he had Wendell Gregory and Malik Charles as co-starters, with Taj McCoy and Chandavian Bradley as number 2s. I don't know how that works. But I guess if you were to break that down, it does kind of add up. Malik Charles, number 1, with Wendell Gregory, number 2. And they are neck and neck, right? They're dead even. So maybe that's what he was hinting out there. But anyway, let me know down in the comment section. You've heard our depth charts. You've seen Robert Allen's depth chart. You've seen McLean Baxley's depth chart. There is some differences. Another massive difference is McLean Baxley has Freddie Brock as RB1. Both Robert Allen and I have Freddie Brock in the RB4-5 category. Could he potentially be RB1? I guess. I mean, obviously, McClain Baxley is seeing something that I'm not, or hearing something that I'm not. Whatever the case may be, there's a lot of pretty noticeable differences between McClain and mine. But ironically, my depth chart and Robert Allen's depth chart are like 90% or 90% the same. So I found that slightly intriguing. Nonetheless, but again, let me know down in the comment section. Do you think I missed one of these 27 players? Do you think maybe one of these dudes there towards the end, like a Rashad Bradley, might actually get a little bit more PT? Obviously, let me know down in the comment section, and let me know down there what you thought about the difference in all three of these depth charts, because they're largely, pretty close. But, McClain and myself and Robert, we have some different spots here and there that are worth taking a peek at. And I do think that just adds validity to the fact that there's even competition at tons of spots, right? There's an even competition at defensive tackle. So it's going to be difficult, just like running back, even competition for the most part at RB. The only contingency there, see, words are hard for me, is, Rodney kind of having some things here and there. Maybe it was a groin, upper hip style of situation. Maybe it's better for him to just kind of take a couple weeks off. But nonetheless, there's so many even competitions that having varying degrees of depth chart starters, it makes sense. It tracks. It's a little interesting. But, of course, let me know down in the comment section what your thoughts are on the 27 dudes and the differences in depth charts. Since we're over here talking about depth, ladies and gentlemen, Rugiet is all of the depth that you need. You've likely all heard of things like Viagra or Cialis, but maybe it's time that you move on to something better. You maybe have even tried those. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is the next generation prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pill that can take hours to work, Rugiet is a 3-in-1 formula that dissolves underneath your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in about 15 minutes. Effects can help you up to 36 hours so you can continue to be that dude, that dog in the bedroom all night. So you can stay confident and in control when that moment has arrived. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. You're going to love the completely online abilities. The Rugiet Connect is going to have a board-certified doctor that ships your treatments discreetly to your door. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a ton of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head on over to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege, all one word, and use the code LockedOnCollege, all one word, to get that 15% off today. That is a Rugiet, Rugiet. This is the best in the business for you. Get with Rugiet today, Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege, all one word. Make sure you use that all one word LockedOnCollege promo for 15% off. Do not miss out on this opportunity for you to get squared away with Rugiet today. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing reviews. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. This is your opportunity to be Rugiet ready, so do not miss this time to get it right in the bedroom. All right, ladies and gentlemen, some more things that Mike Gundy was able to talk about in today's press conference. Some of it was just traditional, quote unquote, coach speak style of answers, but I think some of it was fairly telling, beneficial, helpful outside of just the 27 dudes. One of the things that was brought up pretty continuously was the ability to adjust to Cowboy culture, right? And he's been impressed with how the cohesiveness and the camaraderie of the locker room has seemingly come together very, very quickly. We're not going to know until we get into crunch time. The fourth quarter tie ball game, couple minutes left moments. those are the times that you see whether you have a close locker room or if you still got some disconnected issues happening. So we're not going to know if the cohesiveness and camaraderie in the locker room is legitimate until we start getting into some of those fourth quarter massive testing moments. But it does feel like they're much more advanced in that department, so much so that Mike Gundy did mention that this was much more physical. This was a much, much, much more physical camp than almost ever before up until very recently. So the last few days, essentially, up until today's full speed, live, 11 on 11, go and get it scrimmage has been kind of teetering things down a little bit as far as the physicality and aggressiveness. And I think it's a phenomenal sign, right? We've tried to accentuate that repeatedly on the show, that the physical intensity, the violence of action, the readiness and willingness to essentially go to war on the football field every single snap, that has increased so much so that it's nice to hear Mike Gundy say that we've gotten to a point that we can now dial down a little bit. Obviously, that leads up until today. Tomorrow, there's going to be kind of a film review, almost a day off, and then we should have a depth chart, a real depth chart coming out here before too long. But him saying that he's comfortable with letting up a little bit has to be an indication that the slobber knocker activities that we've been operating within for the rest of fall camp is a beautiful sign. Because if we were not getting it and Mike Gundy didn't feel comfortable with the intensity level, then we would probably still be going pretty hot and heavy even this last few days. Monitoring playing time is going to be important, right? So we have a lot of even competitions happening. So instead of trying to squeeze a round peg in a square hole, what he's saying is we're going to get a decent amount of rotations, hopefully pretty deep into the season. So that way our health and availability is at its maximum come October. So again, I do think this is indicative of the fact that there's an exorbitant number of dudes who are pretty even. Gunny even said that no matter what they are sitting depth chart wise, if they're doing everything they're supposed to do, they're holding themselves accountable, right? They're doing the lifting, they're doing the film study, they're working on their off days and getting that extra time in. If they're doing all of that, they deserve to play. That's what he said. He told all the players, or all the coaches, that if your dude's checking all the boxes, no matter where he's at, you need to get him in the ball game. You need to get him live reps. And I think that's kind of, enticing to me, because it doesn't sound like it's going to be like a handout style of thing, right? You're not just going to get snaps because it's fun and cool. But if you're checking off all of the boxes on a weekly basis and you're good enough to be in the number 2 style of conversation, you deserve some PT. That makes this whole conversation to me much, much, much more exciting. Yeah, Barry Trammell and a couple others mentioned, how do you find the leaders within whenever you have 65 new dudes? And he said essentially out of 105 scholarship players, only about 99 are completely bought in at the moment. I think there is an extension there, right? Because you're afforded, 10 DSAs. So you have 105 roster dudes, and then you have 10 more guys that could somehow, some way, someday earn a roster spot. So essentially like the new age style of a walk-on. But more often than not, right, those dudes are likely being put in a spot because they're not living up to something they're supposed to be doing or so on and so forth. So let's call it 115 dudes. Out of 115 players, 99 are bought in. And it may be the case. And if that is the case, 99 out of 105 scholarship dudes that are dialed in, buying in, ready to rock and roll, statistically, if that is true, that's really, really good. And even if it's slightly hyperbolic, right? Maybe it's 90 of the 105 instead of 99 of the 105. Even then, you're probably in a pretty good spot. The emphasis is, in fact, going to be on the returning dudes. And I think this is a good sign when you mention the 27 guys out of the new 65 that should be playing against UT Martin. I think some of us could have projected more than 27, right? If you have 65 new dudes and you're essentially having to rebuild the entire roster, having more than 27 start or play in the first game's not completely crazy. So I think that's good. It's a good sign that the Sean Browns and the Jaleel Johnsons, the Cale Smiths, the Cam Smiths, all of those dudes have been able to kind of keep off some of these new Oklahoma State Cowboys. There's going to be an adjustment period, sure. But once that happens, I think Oklahoma State is going to be in a much different position as the season progresses. And then we'll kind of shift gears here in a second. But before we do that, there was a couple other things that Mike Gundy mentioned that I think was pretty cool to talk about. You know, the 9-game conference schedule. We just saw, evidently, supposedly, the SEC next season is going to go to a 9-game conference schedule. They should, right? As Mike Gundy said, be a man, be 40, play 9 games. That's how it's supposed to go. And I think that's pretty cool for him to come out and say some fun things like that. You know, realistically speaking, when Mike Gundy is giving us some of these little nuggets, I'm very appreciative. There's a lot of things that Mike Gundy likes to be pretty tight-lipped about. Unfortunately, some of those things that are beneficial to us out here in the media world and the betting world, having those availability lists is going to be pretty big time. But just the physicality being right where Gundy is comfortable with, knowing that we were going to be more physical with a much more physically oriented and verbally loud, ready to fight and go to war every day, coaching staff, especially on the defensive side of the ball, for him to embrace that. And then also see enough of the locker room building, the cohesiveness, the understanding of what they need to do to help each other and still have that violence of action. For him to shut it down a little bit early, I think it's a great sign. Today's full speed 11-on-11 game style of scrimmage is going to tell a lot. Right? That's going to show us likely what the actual depth chart is going to be. And since it's an early game next week on a Thursday, it's possible that this depth chart could be released over the weekend. I mean, at least I would imagine the locker room's probably going to get a heads up this weekend on what the depth chart is going to look like. So show up, show out today. This is the full speed 11-on-11 game atmospheric run through. This is going to be an opportunity for dudes to solidify. So if they're right on that line, right, if you're, let's say, Austin Kwecky, Noah McKinney, 1A, 1B style of situation, today is the day where they need to show a degree of separation. The same could be said at quarterback, which is what we're going to talk about next episode. Because, yeah, it's time to ride something. That's for sure. But the packaging, yeah, it's pretty interesting. The availability, also interesting. And even though he gave the politically correct coach speak style of answer, no, he's not kidding anybody. We all know exactly where Mike Gundy stands on that stuff. And the OU hackers. Before we move on to some of that fun stuff that Mike Gundy decided to close us out with, we do have to talk about the next in line. This is open phone for you today. Anybody who's looking to have something run a little bit more smoothly, especially when it comes to business, every single missed call is essentially money being left on the table. Talk about or think about amongst yourselves the last time you needed a service done. If you didn't find a person fairly quickly or that person didn't answer, you probably moved on to the next one, right? That's why you need open phone for your business today, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. Open phone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. If you juggle multiple phones just to keep your business and personal stuff separate, open phone is going to solve that for you. Your entire team can share one number and respond to customers like in a shared inbox without any more of that, oh, I wonder who's going to handle this style of concern. And they also have an AI agent that handles all of the after-hours calls, answering common questions and capturing leads so you never miss out on that customer again. See why over 60,000 businesses trust Open Phone. They're offering Locked On listeners, that is you, 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnCollege. That is openphone, openphone.com/LockedOnCollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. So get with Open Phone today. No missed calls, no missed customers means no more missed opportunities for you and your business. Prize Picks is also here to stand and deliver for you. This is the best daily fantasy platform in the country by a solid mile. This is going to let you turn your football predictions into real life rewards in the most fun way possible. Preseason is obviously heating up. We're about to begin college football season. Whether you've got your eye on a massive big name quarterback doing Heisman level things, or you've got a breakout wide receiver or running back that you know is about to make a big name for himself and give a Doak Walker, Blitnikoff style of push, Prize Picks make it easy for you to get in on the game action. The weekly flyer for this weekend's Prize Picks is going to offer you maximum discounts like maybe Avery Johnson, max discount. To go along with Dak Prescott, max discount. You could put Jaylen Warren, Chuba Hubbard, Tylan Wallace, Brennan Presley all together. Highlight your winnings and have the most fun physically possible with Prize Picks. The flex play option is a total game changer as well. Even when one of your picks misses, you still can double your money. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Get with Prize Picks today and do not miss out on the spot for you to run your own game. All right, before we skedaddle on off of here, I thought it was pretty hilarious that Mike Gundy was asked about the availability reports that are having to be put out. We just saw Kansas State, Iowa State, they put out their availability report. It's an injury report. That's what it is, right? And it's probably most beneficial for people covering the teams and for people making bets, right? Because if, for example, if both Haas Haney and Zane Flores are ever injured in the same week and they cannot play, and the Cowboys have to rely on Banks Bowen and Mason Schubert, whatever the betting lines are, they're going to change very, very quickly and very dramatically, ironically enough. To be a old school heavy hitter in the betting world, you kind of had to have the ability to acquire this information. Now teams have to put it out. So when he was asked about it, he was like, yeah, I really don't have anything to say about that. You and I both know that's not true. Mike Gundy, Kyle Whittingham, probably even Rich Rodriguez, they're so old school. They want to hold everything close to the vest. They don't want the other team knowing what's happening or knowing who to prepare for or know what systems are going to be more advantageous if the starting linebacker is hurt, something to that effect. So there is some gamesmanship. There is some chess. There is some cat and mouse that Mike Gundy, Kyle Whittingham, those style of coaches have always utilized. I mean, we've never, ever, ever, ever been big on injury updates. But now we have to be to some degree. And you could tell. He didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to answer it. You know exactly his thoughts on that. Mike Gundy hates it. He doesn't think that us or you or the other team or anybody else needs to know what players are hurt, what players can't play, what players can play. So it was just kind of funny that he was asked that, and then his response, his facial expression, pretty classic Gundy. And then lastly, he was asked about how, OU is allowing random regular fans to go pay. And I haven't looked, but I heard it was like, $600, $700, $800-ish that you can pay to OU to go sit in on the post-game press conference. I don't think you can ask, Brent Venables questions per se, but you sit next to all of the Barry Chamberlains and the Jenny Carlsons and the Robert Allens of the OU world. And his facial expression says it all, right? Mike Gundy would hate that. Our SID would lose their ever-loving mind if, quote-unquote, normie poors were allowed to sit in on the press conference. But then he was like, well, if that's true, then maybe we need to send some hackers down there, right? We need to get somebody in all of these OU post-game press conferences. He called them hackers. I think he meant spies, essentially. But I had a good laugh. I thought it was pretty funny. I think it's a stupid idea. Right. And this is somebody that is on the outside looking in of Oklahoma State SID approval people. Right. They don't like my flavor of taters. It is what it is. But at the same point in time, I wouldn't want just random Tom, Joe, and Harry's sitting in there. So I get it. I get why he would not like it. But at the same time, right, there's people that cover this from a completely different angle that still should have some of that, but it shouldn't be a pay for thing. Although, NIL era, I don't know, it is a way to squeeze some dollars. I just don't particularly love it. There it is. It is what it is. All right, y'all. You know the drill. As always, God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere, so happy you choose to be here. All right, y'all. You know the drill. Hit the like, subscribe, share, comment, and podcast and people out there. Do the fun stuff, a.k.a. do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave